Somewhere in Los Angeles, there is a phone that hasn't been picked up in months. And on the other end of that silence sits one of the most famous friendships in the world. For almost a decade, these two women stood together at every award show, every birthday, every quiet dinner out of the spotlight. One of them is the biggest pop star on the planet. The other is a movie star with her own empire. And somewhere between a courtroom and a group chat, something broke. Or maybe it didn't. Maybe it's still breaking right now while you're watching this. Because the truth is, nobody outside their inner circle knows for certain where things stand today. What we do know is stranger, messier, and more human than any headline can capture. So let's go back to where it all began and walk through it, step by step, to understand exactly how two of the closest friends in Hollywood ended up here. It starts in 2015. Back then, nobody was talking about a feud. Nobody was talking about lawsuits or subpoenas or unsealed text messages. It was just two women in their 20s, both already famous in their own right, who found each other almost by accident. The spark, believe it or not, came from a magazine ad. Blake Lively appeared in a campaign that seemed to reference one of Taylor Swift's music videos, the one packed with a rotating cast of famous friends. Fans immediately jumped to conclusions, assuming Lively was throwing shade at Swift. So Lively did what a lot of us would do. She went on social media and cleared the air herself, joking that she actually owned a Taylor Swift voodoo doll, and signing off her post as though the two of them were already family. It was silly, it was playful, and it worked exactly the way these things sometimes do in the internet age. Swift noticed, the two started talking, and within months, they weren't just online friends trading jokes. They were real friends, spending actual time together. By December of that same year, they were photographed jumping in the air together at a theme park in Australia, the kind of candid, goofy photo that only happens between people who are genuinely comfortable with each other. It wasn't a staged, red carpet moment. It was two friends on a trip, having fun, the way anyone might with someone they trust. And from there, the friendship only deepened. The next summer brought one of the most talked about parties in Swift's social calendar, her now legendary 4th of July gathering. It was already famous for the guest list alone, packed with the kind of star power that turned it into a cultural moment every year. Lively was there. So was her husband, Reynolds. So was Swift's boyfriend at the time. It was the kind of gathering where the lines between celebrity and ordinary friendship blurred completely. These weren't people performing friendship for cameras. They were sharing holidays the way any close group of friends might. Except this group happened to be some of the most photographed people alive. As the years went on, the connection between the two families kept growing, not shrinking. When Swift released her album Reputation in November of 2017, something remarkable happened right at the very beginning of one of its songs. A small voice, a child's voice, opens the track. That voice belonged to Lively and Reynolds' daughter, James. Think about what that means. This wasn't a passing acquaintance being invited to a party. This was a level of trust and closeness where Swift wanted the actual voice of her friend's child woven into her own music, permanently, on an album that would go on to sell millions of copies. That's not something you do for just anyone. The following year, when Swift brought her Reputation tour to Massachusetts, Lively and Reynolds were spotted in the crowd, filming and cheering as Swift performed that very song live. And this pattern kept repeating itself over and over across the following years. When Swift released her album Evermore, Lively publicly thanked her for it. When Halloween rolled around in 2021, Swift didn't just send a text or a gift. She showed up in person, dressed in a squirrel costume, and went trick-or-treating alongside Lively, Reynolds, and their kids, walking the streets of New York like it was the most normal thing in the world for a global superstar to be doing. That same November, when Swift appeared as the musical guest on Saturday Night Live, Lively and Reynolds were there too, not just in the audience, but at the after-party as well. And just weeks after that, Swift trusted Lively with something even bigger than a party invitation. She trusted her with the camera. Lively stepped behind the lens to direct the music video for Swift's song, I bet you think about me. Reynolds later gushed about how much he loved it, saying his whole family was obsessed with what Lively had created. This wasn't a favor called in from a fan. This was one of the most powerful women in music, handing creative control of her own art to her friend, because she trusted her taste and her vision completely. Somewhere in the middle of all this, it's worth pausing to think about what made this friendship different from so many of the other celebrity pairings that get talked about in magazines. A lot of famous friendships are built almost entirely in public. Two stars get photographed together at a handful of events each year. They post a birthday message once or twice, and the entire relationship exists mostly as a performance for cameras and headlines. What made Swift and Lively different is that so much of what we know about their bond comes from moments that weren't staged for anyone's benefit. A theme park trip in Australia isn't a red carpet. A 4th of July barbecue isn't a press event. A child's voice recorded for an album isn't something you fake for publicity. These were the kinds of details that leaked out almost by accident, through old social media posts, through interviews where Reynolds or Swift mentioned something in passing, through paparazzi photos of ordinary outings that nobody had planned to be photographed. And that's exactly why, when things started to unravel later on, so many people found it hard to believe. This wasn't a shallow, red carpet-only friendship. This was something that had clearly been built out of real affection, over real years in real, unglamorous moments. There's also the matter of how the two women talked about each other publicly, whenever the subject came up in interviews. Swift, over the years, has spoken often about the importance of female friendship in her life, framing it almost as a kind of armor against an industry that can be brutally isolating for young women thrust into fame. Lively was consistently mentioned as part of that inner circle, someone Swift trusted enough to bring into her orbit of family holidays and quiet, unguarded moments. And Lively, for her part, leaned into the friendship publicly too, joking about it, referencing it, never treating it as something to downplay or hide. When two famous people are this open about valuing each other, it tends to mean something. Public figures usually guard their real friendships carefully, wary of being accused of using a friendship for clout or attention. The fact that both women spoke about their bond so freely for so many years suggests it wasn't calculated. It was simply real enough that neither of them felt the need to hide it. By November of 2022, Swift was standing on stage at the American Music Awards, and in the middle of her acceptance speech, she made a point of thanking Lively by name, publicly, in front of millions of viewers. That's the kind of gesture people don't fake. You don't use a national television moment to thank someone unless that person genuinely matters to you. So by the time we reach 2023, what we're looking at isn't just two celebrities who happen to know each other. We're looking at nearly a decade of birthdays, holidays, tours, music videos, and quiet, ordinary moments of friendship, all stacked on top of each other, one after another, forming something that looked, from the outside, unbreakable. And there's one more detail that says more than almost anything else could. At some point along the way, Lively and Reynolds made Swift the godmother of not just one, but all four of their children. Think about the weight of that decision. Choosing a godmother isn't a publicity move. It's a statement about who you trust to be there for your kids if something ever happened to you. And out of everyone in their lives, they chose her, which is exactly why what happened next feels so jarring. Because this isn't a story about two people who were never that close to begin with, quietly drifting apart the way acquaintances sometimes do. This is a story about a friendship built on a decade of trust, suddenly finding itself under a kind of pressure it had never faced before. And that pressure didn't come from the two of them. It came from somewhere else entirely. It came from a courtroom. To understand how a lawsuit ended up shaking one of Hollywood's most solid friendships, we have to step away from Swift and Lively for a moment and look at a movie. In 2024, Lively starred in a film adaptation called It Ends With Us, based on a best-selling novel. Her co-star and the film's director was a man named Justin Baldoni. On the surface, this was simply a big-budget movie release, the kind that comes with press tours and red carpets and glowing interviews. But underneath the surface, Something had clearly gone very wrong between Lively and Baldoni during the making of that film. What followed was one of the messiest, most public legal battles Hollywood had seen in years. Lively accused Baldoni of misconduct during the production. Baldoni, in turn, filed his own counterclaims, accusing Lively of trying to seize creative control of the film and of shutting him out of its promotion and its premiere. Both sides denied the other's version of events completely. Lawyers got involved. Statements were issued. Motions were filed. And a trial date was eventually set, with Lively expected to testify in court in early 2026. To understand just how far this battle spread, it helps to remember that lawsuits of this size rarely stay confined to a courtroom. They spill out into the press, they spill out onto social media, and they spill out into the personal lives of everyone, even loosely connected to the people involved. Reports at the time described an alleged takedown effort, a strategy some claimed had been assembled to damage Lively's public image during the film's press tour. Whether every detail of that alleged strategy was accurate or not, the mere existence of such intense, coordinated conflict gives you a sense of the temperature this dispute had reached. This wasn't a quiet disagreement being handled behind closed doors by lawyers. It was a full-blown public war, playing out in real time, with both sides and their supporters weighing in constantly. And once a legal fight reaches that scale, it doesn't just involve the two people named on the court documents. It pulls in co-stars, family members, close friends, anyone who ever appeared in a photo, anyone who ever posted a supportive caption. The bigger the fight got, the wider its blast radius became. And eventually that blast radius reached all the way to Nashville and to one of Lively's oldest, closest friends. Now here's where things get complicated for people who had nothing to do with the film at all. Lawsuits like this, one don't stay contained to the two people directly involved. They tend to pull in everyone standing nearby, and in this case, that included some very famous names. Reynolds found himself dragged into the drama, with claims that he and Hugh Jackman had used a character in a completely unrelated superhero movie to poke fun at Baldoni. And then in May of 2025, the drama reached all the way to Taylor Swift. Swift's connection to the film itself was actually very small. Her team maintained that her only real involvement was allowing one of her songs to be used in the movie. She wasn't a producer. She wasn't a cast member. She had no creative control over the project whatsoever. But small connections don't always stay small in a legal battle this intense. And in May of 2025, Baldoni's legal team subpoenaed her, pulling her directly into the middle of a fight that had nothing to do with her own career. Put yourself in her position for a second. You're one of the most famous people on earth. Every move you make gets picked apart by millions of people within minutes. And suddenly, because of a friend's legal battle that you had almost nothing to do with, you're being legally compelled to get involved. Your name showing up in court filings, your private business potentially becoming public record. That's not a comfortable place for anyone to be, let alone someone whose every action is already under a microscope. And this is where things start to get murky, where the story shifts from documented facts into the territory of claims and counterclaims that are much harder to verify. According to reports at the time, Baldoni's team alleged that a source close to Swift had told them something explosive, that Lively's own lawyers had threatened to leak private text messages between Swift and Lively unless Swift agreed to publicly release a statement supporting her friend. It's important to say clearly that Lively's team pushed back hard against this claim, calling it irrelevant, improper, and inflammatory in a statement at the time. So we have two competing versions of events here, and neither side has been proven definitively correct. But even the existence of that kind of allegation, whether or not it was accurate, gives you a sense of just how tense and high stakes this situation had become for everyone caught inside it. It's worth slowing down on this particular claim for a moment, because it captures something important about how stories like this one spread. In a legal battle this large, with millions of dollars and two reputations on the line, allegations get thrown from both directions constantly, and not all of them hold up. Some end up supported by documents and evidence. Others end up dismissed, denied, or quietly dropped without ever being proven true. The claim about a threatened leak of private texts falls into a gray area, reported by outlets as something Baldoni's side alleged, firmly denied by Lively's team, and never independently confirmed by any neutral third party. That doesn't mean it was invented out of thin air, but it also doesn't mean it happened exactly as described. What it does tell us, regardless of which version is closer to the truth, is that by mid-2025, this dispute had become so heated that even the friendship between two women who had nothing to do with the film's production was being treated as leverage in a legal strategy. Whether that leverage was real or only alleged, the fact that anyone believed it was plausible enough to report says a great deal about how much pressure Swift found herself under, simply for being close to someone caught in a legal storm. It's worth slowing down on this particular claim for a moment, because it captures something important about how stories like this one spread. In a legal battle this large, with millions of dollars and two reputations on the line, allegations get thrown from both directions constantly, and not all of them hold up. Some end up supported by documents and evidence. Others end up dismissed, denied, or quietly dropped without ever being proven true. The claim about a threatened leak of private texts falls into a gray area, reported by outlets as something Baldoni's side alleged, firmly denied by Lively's team, and never independently confirmed by any neutral third party. That doesn't mean it was invented out of thin air, but it also doesn't mean it happened exactly as described. What it does tell us, regardless of which version is closer to the truth, is that by mid-2025, this dispute had become so heated that even the friendship between two women who had nothing to do with the film's production was being treated as leverage in a legal strategy. Whether that leverage was real or only alleged, the fact that anyone believed it was plausible enough to report says a great deal about how much pressure Swift found herself under, simply for being close to someone caught in a legal storm. And according to sources who spoke to entertainment outlets around that time, the pressure was taking a visible toll. One insider described Swift as being deeply uncomfortable about being pulled into a legal fight that wasn't hers, and said that her friendship with Lively had become strained as a direct result. Another report used a stronger word entirely, saying the friendship had halted, not paused, not quiet for a while, halted, as if something had come to a complete stop. It wasn't just Swift, either. Reports from that period suggested that another one of Lively's close friends, the model Gigi Hadid, had also taken a step back around the same time. Multiple people in Lively's circle, it seemed, were quietly recalibrating how close they wanted to stand to a legal fight that showed no signs of ending quickly. Sources described a fragile peace between Swift and Lively that had existed even before all of this, and said the subpoena and everything that came with it had fractured whatever peace was left. One insider put it plainly, saying Swift wanted absolutely no part in the drama surrounding the lawsuit. Think about how quietly devastating that must have felt from Lively's side of things, even if none of it was truly her fault. Here she was, in the middle of the most public legal fight of her career, and one by one, some of the people closest to her appeared to be stepping back, not necessarily out of disloyalty, but out of self-protection. Being associated too closely with an ongoing lawsuit can be genuinely risky for anyone in the public eye. A stray comment, a poorly timed photo, an old text message resurfacing in a filing. Any of these things could suddenly make a bystander part of the story instead of simply a friend standing nearby. So even if Swift's and Hadid's caution was completely reasonable from a legal and reputational standpoint, it likely still felt, from where Lively was standing, like watching her support system quietly shrink at the exact moment she needed it most. That's often how these situations work. Nobody necessarily does anything wrong. People just get careful, and carefulness, even when justified, can look and feel a lot like abandonment to the person on the receiving end of it. Now, at this point, if you were reading the headlines in real time, you might have assumed the friendship was simply over. Done. Finished after nearly 10 years. But real friendships, the kind built on a decade of trick-or-treating and secret music video collaborations and being chosen as a godmother, don't usually end with a clean, quiet break. They tend to end messily if they end at all, with moments of distance, followed by moments of reaching back out, followed by more distance. And that messiness is exactly what played out next. Fast forward to January of 2026, and the legal battle produced something nobody expected: a window straight into the private words exchanged between these two women. As part of the ongoing lawsuit, a batch of legal filings were unsealed on January the 20th, and buried inside them were actual text messages exchanged directly between Swift and Lively, discussing the very shift happening in their friendship. These weren't secondhand claims from anonymous sources anymore. These were their own words, now part of the public record. And what those texts revealed was something far more tender, far more human, than the cold word "halted" had suggested. In one message, addressing the distance that had grown between them, Swift wrote something that suggested forgiveness wasn't even necessary, essentially telling Lively that no apology was needed, and asking her simply to come back. Read that again. This is one of the most famous, most powerful women in the world. And in a private message that was never meant to become a headline, friend to come back to her. She wasn't demanding an explanation. It's a small moment, nursing a grudge, but it tells you almost everything about what this rift actually was. It wasn't necessarily built on anger between the two of them directly. It was built on circumstance, on legal pressure, on a subpoena that Swift never asked for, on a lawsuit that was never hers to begin with. The distance wasn't necessarily a choice either one of them wanted to make. It was something that got forced onto them by outside events, the way a legal storm can sweep through a friendship the same way it sweeps through a company or a family. It's a small moment, but it tells you almost everything about what this rift actually was. It wasn't necessarily built on anger between the two of them directly. It was built on circumstance, on legal pressure, on a subpoena that Swift never asked for, on a lawsuit that was never hers to begin with. The distance wasn't necessarily a choice either one of them wanted to make. It was something that got forced onto them by outside events, the way a legal storm can sweep through a friendship the same way it sweeps through a company or a family. Consider, too, how strange it must have felt for both of them to have this private moment become public at all. These were words meant for one person, sent in a private conversation, never intended to be read by lawyers, journalists, or millions of strangers online. That's one of the strangest side effects of a lawsuit this size. Nothing stays private if it becomes relevant to a legal case. Personal texts sent late at night or during a quiet, vulnerable moment can end up printed in official court filings and picked apart by anyone with an internet connection. For two people who have spent their entire adult lives trying to protect some sliver of privacy from an industry that constantly demands access to everything, having a genuinely tender, vulnerable exchange turned into public evidence must have been its own kind of painful. It's one thing to lose closeness with a friend. It's another thing entirely to have the private words you use trying to repair that closeness broadcast to the world without your permission. And yet, in a strange way, that same unsealing gave outside observers something rare, actual proof, in the two women's own words, that the emotional core of this story wasn't bitterness or betrayal. It was longing. It was one friend telling another that there was nothing to apologize for, that all she wanted was for things to go back to the way they used to be. If this had simply been two people who'd grown tired of each other, or fallen out over some petty disagreement, you wouldn't expect language like that. You'd expect coldness or silence, or carefully worded statements from publicists. Instead, buried inside a legal filing meant to resolve a dispute about a movie, was a fragment of something achingly ordinary: one woman missing her friend. Once those texts became public, the entertainment world had renewed reason to believe this friendship, strained as it clearly was, might not be permanently broken after all. And sure enough, a few months later, new reports began to circulate suggesting exactly that. By June of 2026, the tone of the coverage had shifted noticeably. New reporting suggested that Swift and Lively had, in fact, reconnected after their long period of distance. According to these reports, efforts had genuinely been made to repair the friendship, and there was speculation that Lively might even attend Swift's wedding, a detail that, if true, would suggest the relationship had moved well beyond simple politeness and back into the territory of real closeness. Weddings are curated guest lists. People don't get invited to weddings out of obligation, especially not to a wedding as high profile as this one is expected to be. If Lively truly has a place on that guest list, it says something significant about where things stand between the two of them behind closed doors. So, for a moment, it looked like the story had a happy, tidy ending. A decade of friendship, tested by an outside legal storm, weathered and repaired. The kind of narrative arc that makes for a satisfying conclusion. It's worth pausing here to think about what a wedding invitation actually represents in a situation like this, because it's easy to skim past a detail like that without appreciating how much weight it carries. A wedding, especially one belonging to someone as famous and as guarded as Swift, is one of the most tightly controlled guest lists in that entire world. Every name on it gets scrutinized. Every name on it sends a message, whether intended or not, about who still matters, who has been forgiven, who has been let back in. If Lively truly does have a place at that wedding, it isn't a small, symbolic gesture. It's close to the biggest possible signal Swift could send that whatever distance existed between them has genuinely closed. People don't extend invitations like that out of obligation or guilt. They extend them because they want that person standing there in the room on one of the most significant days of their life. So when reports in June suggested this was even a possibility being discussed, it wasn't just gossip filler. It was potentially the clear sign yet that behind the scenes, real repair work had been happening quietly out of the public eye, while the rest of us were still debating whether the friendship was over. Except the story didn't stay tidy for long, because just a few weeks after those reconciliation reports, in the middle of July 2026, a different picture emerged. New insider claims suggested that Lively was still struggling to come to terms with what had happened to the friendship, and that she personally felt the fallout had been disproportionate, especially considering how close the two of them had been for nearly 10 years. In other words, even if contact had resumed on some level, the emotional wound underneath it hadn't necessarily healed. There's a difference between two people speaking again and two people feeling like everything is actually fine. Reports from this period suggested Lively was sitting somewhere in between those two things. Back in touch, perhaps, but still carrying the weight of feeling like she'd lost something that never should have been at risk in the first place. And honestly, that feeling makes a lot of sense if you put yourself in her shoes. Lively was the one standing at the center of the actual lawsuit. She was the one whose reputation was being fought over in courtrooms and headlines. And in the middle of defending herself in one of the most difficult professional periods of her life, she also had to watch some of her closest relationships grow distant, seemingly as a direct consequence of a legal fight she hadn't started and couldn't simply walk away from. From that angle, it's not hard to understand why she might feel the disproportionate cost of this whole ordeal wasn't just measured in legal fees or press coverage, but in the quiet, personal cost of nearly losing one of her oldest friends over a situation that, at its core, had almost nothing to do with that friendship in the first place. Even if Swift's caution was understandable, even if her discomfort with being subpoenaed was completely reasonable, none of that necessarily makes the experience of losing that closeness, even temporarily, hurt any less on Lively's end. Two things can be true at once. Swift's instinct to protect herself from a legal mess that wasn't hers can be reasonable, and Lively's grief over the resulting distance can be real and valid, without either one of them being the villain of this story. It's also worth noting how differently this entire saga has been framed depending on which outlet you're reading and which month the report came out in. Some articles lean hard into the word feud, painting this as some dramatic falling out driven by jealousy or betrayal. Other reports use softer language, talking about space, about strain, about a friendship needing time to breathe. And a few, especially the ones drawing directly from the unsealed court documents, paint a picture that's far gentler than either extreme. Two women who clearly still care about each other, caught in circumstances neither of them fully controlled. The truth, as is so often the case with celebrity stories pieced together from anonymous sources, likely sits somewhere in the overlap between all of these versions, closer to the messy middle than to any single dramatic headline. And so, where does that leave us? Right here, in this strange, unresolved space, is where the story currently stands. And it's worth being honest about that, rather than pretending there's a clean, definitive answer. Different outlets, at different points over roughly the last year and a half, have described this friendship as everything from completely halted to quietly reconciled to still bruised beneath the surface. These reports come from unnamed sources, described only as insiders or people close to the situation, and neither Swift nor Lively has stepped in front of a camera to lay out, in their own words, exactly where things stand today. What we have instead is a patchwork pieced together from legal filings, entertainment reporting, and anonymous sourcing, and it's a patchwork that shifts depending on which month you're looking at. What we can say with real confidence is this. For nearly a decade, Taylor Swift and Blake Lively built one of the most genuine-seeming friendships in an industry where genuine friendships are often hard to find underneath all the performance and publicity. It was a friendship built on small, human things, trick-or-treating in costumes, directing each other's music videos, naming each other's children's godmother, showing up for birthdays and after-parties without any cameras demanding it. And then, through no apparent fault of either woman, a completely separate legal battle, one involving other people entirely, reached out and put real strain on that friendship. Swift was pulled into a lawsuit she had almost nothing to do with, and the pressure of that situation created real, documented distance between two people who had spent 10 years building something close. Whether that distance has now fully healed, whether Lively really will be standing in the crowd at Swift's wedding, or whether the hurt Lively reportedly still feels will keep some quiet distance between them for a while longer, is something only the two of them actually know. The rest of us are left piecing it together from unsealed texts, anonymous insiders, and reporting that seems to shift every few months. Maybe that's simply what it looks like when a real friendship gets tested by something neither person saw coming. Not a clean ending, not a tidy villain or a simple explanation. Just two people caught in the middle of something bigger than themselves, trying to figure out, one text message at a time, whether they can find their way back to each other. And maybe there's something worth sitting with in that, beyond the celebrity names attached to it. Because underneath all the fame, the lawsuits, the subpoenas, and the wedding speculation, this is ultimately a very ordinary kind of story, one that plays out quietly in ordinary lives all the time. Friendships get tested by things that have nothing to do with the friendship itself. A job, a legal problem, a family conflict, a piece of bad timing. Any of it can create distance between people who care about each other deeply. Sometimes that distance is temporary, a rough patch that gets talked through and repaired. Sometimes it lingers longer than anyone wants it to, not because the love is gone, but because trust takes time to rebuild once it's been shaken, even when nobody involved did anything truly wrong. What makes this particular story compelling isn't that it's unusual. It's that it's happening to two of the most visible people on the planet, which means every quiet, private struggle that would normally stay hidden inside a friendship gets dragged out into the open, dissected, and turned into headlines before either woman has even had the chance to fully process it herself. So until Taylor Swift or Blake Lively decides to speak on this directly in their own words, without a source, without an insider, without a legal filing standing between them and the public, that's exactly where the story will stay. Somewhere between halted and healed, waiting the way real, complicated friendships often do.